I am Morgan, 28, and I never thought my corporate finance career would end up being my shield against my own family. Growing up with parents who treated money like a weapon shaped my adult life in ways I never anticipated. When Brenda, my mother, texted about our mandatory family vacation to the Amalfi Coast, she explicitly added, "First-class flights are $9,000 each. If you cannot afford your share this time, you are out of the trip." I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. The silence from my parents' estate in Aspen felt heavier than usual until my phone vibrated against the granite countertop. I was sitting at the kitchen island in my secure, minimalist, downtown Denver loft, sipping black coffee. My sanctuary was a stark, intentional contrast to my parents' heavily mortgaged luxury ski chalet. The notification flashed across my locked screen, bright and demanding. Then came another, and another. 4 separate alerts from my primary banking application materialized in under 60 seconds. I set my mug down, unlocked my screen, and felt my heart flatline against my ribs. 4 first-class tickets to Italy, $9,000 each. $36,000 in total, all of them charged to a replacement credit card that I had requested weeks ago but had never actually received in the mail. I had opened that specific credit line back in college, and despite my meticulous updates on all my other accounts, Brenda had somehow managed to impersonate me on the phone and revert the primary mailing address back to their Aspen estate by exploiting a forgotten security question. It took exactly 3 seconds for my analytical brain to connect the jagged dots. The bank had mistakenly mailed my new card to my old address in Aspen. Brenda had intercepted it. She had opened my personal mail, activated the card, and booked $36,000 in luxury international flights without blinking an eye. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I didn't dial her number to beg for an explanation or demand a tearful apology. Anger wasn't loud this time. It was entirely clinical. I just opened my laptop, logged into my secure banking portal with dual-factor authentication, and started clicking. I navigated to the fraud department interface and hit dispute all. I locked the account permanently. I initiated a comprehensive, impenetrable credit freeze across all 3 major bureaus. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon some lingering sense of familial regret, but there was only pure, terrifying clarity. This wasn't a nervous breakdown, it was a balance sheet, and they had just bankrupted my trust. The immediate retaliation was necessary because I knew exactly what would happen if I hesitated. If I had paused, if I had stayed silent out of some deeply ingrained familial guilt, the devastation would have been total and irreversible. The $36,000 would have quickly ballooned into $86,000 with the luxury yacht deposits I later learned they planned to make on that same card. My hard-earned 800 credit score would have been destroyed in a matter of days. As a corporate financial auditor, a ruined credit score wouldn't just be an inconvenience. It would have cost me my CPA license and my professional standing. I would have been instantly bankrupted, chained to my parents' toxic, spiraling debt forever, forced to pay the ultimate price for my own exploitation. Freezing the cards wasn't just a reaction. It was a matter of total financial survival. My retaliation was complete by 12:03 a.m. The trap they had set for me was neutralized before Brenda even had the chance to print the extravagant itineraries. I sat in the quiet of my loft, the glow of the screen illuminating the cold, hard truth of my reality. They had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and I was going to make sure they felt the full, devastating weight of the consequences. The transaction was over. My diploma hung perfectly straight on the wall of my home office, a constant, glaring reminder of exactly what my independence had cost me. I looked at the framed paper and felt the familiar, suffocating weight of the past pressing down on my chest. I graduated with $120,000 in student loans. Every single penny of my education was funded by my own blood, sweat, and endless double shifts. Meanwhile, my parents maintained their pristine, heavily mortgaged luxury ski chalet in Aspen, hosting elaborate dinners for high society friends and projecting an image of untouchable upper-class wealth. They flatly refused to help with my college tuition, claiming their money was tied up in complex investments that couldn't be touched. Yet, just a year after I graduated, they easily extracted a $6,000 temporary cash flow loan from me. They swore on our relationship that it would be repaid within a month. It vanished into the bottomless void of their lifestyle, never to be seen again. This was the trap of normalized cruelty that defined our lives. Growing up in a narcissistic family system, I was meticulously groomed for a very specific utilitarian role. I was the designated financial scapegoat. My parents desperately needed a steady, reliable resource to drain so they could continuously fund the golden child, my older brother Cameron and his wife Alyssa. Cameron was treated like true royalty. He was handed down payments, luxury vehicles, and endless praise, while I was handed guilt trips, expectations, and the bill. The system was designed to keep me perpetually striving for an approval that was never coming. I had been the silent investor in their twisted version of family, paying the emotional and financial property taxes on a relationship that was fundamentally bankrupt from the start. They didn't see me as an autonomous human being or a daughter. They saw me as a revolving line of credit to maintain their elite social facade. I consulted my therapist, Dr. Lauren, for years to untangle this deeply ingrained web of manipulation. She helped me realize that familial DNA does not automatically excuse financial exploitation. Love is not a binding contract where you endlessly foot the bill for someone else's vanity and reckless spending. But societal conditioning trains us to mask this abuse under the guise of simply helping out family. We are relentlessly told to forgive, to keep the peace, to remember that they raised us. But the truth is, stealing $36,000 is a felony, whether it is done by a masked stranger in a dark alley or a mother in a brightly lit suburban kitchen. The ledger of their betrayals was long, meticulously documented, and undeniable. I had paid my dues to this family tenfold. I owed them absolutely nothing. The realization was sharp and liberating. I was no longer the anxious girl trying to earn her place at a table where the game was rigged. I was a corporate auditor, and I was finally closing the books on their toxic enterprise for good. The fallout did not begin with an apology. It began with a highly coordinated, vicious ambush. Rather than expressing even a fraction of remorse for the intercepted credit card and the stolen funds, Brenda went entirely on the offensive. She orchestrated a massive, theatrical family gathering, summoning Aunt Valerie, my cousins Dylan and Haley, and of course, Cameron and Alyssa. Facing the terrifying prospect of exposure, Brenda initiated a chilling, calculated gaslighting campaign designed to completely destroy my credibility before I could utter a single word of the truth. She stood in front of our extended family, expertly dabbing her eyes with a tissue, and delivered a masterclass in psychological warfare. She told them, with a perfectly calibrated tremor of maternal concern in her voice, that my demanding corporate auditor job had finally broken my mind. She claimed that I was suffering from a severe, stress-induced psychotic break. According to Brenda's sickening narrative, I had purchased the $36,000 in first-class tickets to Italy myself as a generous gift to the family, but my fragile, fractured mental state. She painted me as unstable, dangerous, and completely out of touch with reality. But her cruelty didn't stop at mere character assassination. She went a terrifying step further. Under the guise of wanting to protect her supposedly unwell daughter, she produced legal documents. She brazenly attempted to coerce Aunt Valerie and the rest of the family into signing fabricated witness statements to submit to a judge for an emergency, court-ordered conservatorship. She wanted them to legally testify to my insanity so she could seize total control of my finances, my downtown Denver loft, and my entire life. It was a breathtaking escalation of hostility. She wasn't just trying to save face. She was executing a hostile takeover of my autonomy. My cousin Dylan, increasingly uncomfortable with the proceedings, secretly texted me the details of the meeting as it was happening. Reading his frantic messages on my screen, the last fragile illusions I held about my mother shattered into dust. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a desperate mother making a mistake under pressure. This was a predator deliberately cornering her prey. She was willing to institutionalize her own daughter, to obliterate my hard-earned professional reputation, just to fund a luxury vacation and cover her tracks. It eliminated every ounce of sympathy I had left in my body. Her actions proved she possessed literally zero remorse, completely greenlighting my next move. They thought I was having a mental breakdown. They thought I was weak and easily silenced. They were about to find out exactly how functioning, sharp, and unforgiving my mind truly was. The Denver air turned sharp and freezing, perfectly matching my unwavering resolve. I shifted entirely from an emotional daughter nursing a profound betrayal to a systematic, relentless corporate auditor dissecting a massive fraud case. I took a personal day from my firm, dressed in my sharpest, most tailored suit, and walked directly into my bank's downtown branch. I bypassed the standard tellers and sat down in the secure office of Nicole, a senior bank fraud representative. I laid out the meticulously gathered evidence, the timeline, the flight confirmations, and the definitive proof of my address change. Nicole was efficient, professional, and visibly horrified by the audacity of the theft. Within an hour, my accounts were hermetically sealed under enhanced security protocols, rendering them completely inaccessible to anyone but me. My next stop was an immaculate, glass-walled office overlooking the mountains where I hired Catherine. She was a ruthless identity theft lawyer with a formidable reputation for flawless precision and zero tolerance for familial excuses. I handed her the complete dossier of Brenda's actions. Together, we drafted formal, uncompromising cease and desist letters to both Brenda and Richard. But I knew letters wouldn't be enough. Elevating the stakes from a toxic family drama to a matter of criminal law, I drove straight to the police precinct. I sat in a sterile, fluorescent-lit room with a detective and filed an official police report for felony identity theft, formally submitting my mother's name to the authorities. The paper trail was now indelible. That night, the trap I had carefully anticipated finally snapped shut. Richard called my cell phone at 9:45. Anticipating his sheer arrogance and desperate need for control, I quietly hit record on my phone before answering the call. He didn't bother with a greeting. He launched instantly into a screaming, unhinged tirade. He hurled threats, demanding I withdraw the police report and reverse the fraud claims immediately. He threatened to ruin my career, to drag my name through the mud, to make sure I was entirely excommunicated from the family. I let him yell. I kept my voice cold, calm, and entirely transactional. I asked him direct, calculated questions about the Italian flights, about Brenda intercepting the mail, about their exact premeditated intentions. Caught up in his own perceived power and blind rage, he answered every single one. He confessed to the theft, proudly detailing how they had planned it, completely unaware that his unhinged confession was being immortalized in crystal-clear digital audio. He hung up the phone, breathing heavily, smugly believing he had successfully intimidated me into submission. He had absolutely no idea he had just handed me the exact weapon that would permanently dismantle his life. The ultimate kill shot was delivered less than 24 hours later. I agreed to a final video call with Brenda, Richard, Cameron, and Aunt Valerie. They logged on, looking incredibly smug, fully expecting my complete surrender after Richard's threatening phone call. Richard sat with his arms crossed, projecting the polished authority of a successful Aspen executive. Brenda wore a look of tragic, practiced patience, playing the wounded but forgiving mother to utter perfection. I didn't offer a greeting. I didn't engage in their manipulative pleasantries. I simply held up my phone to the camera, unmuted my microphone, and played the secret audio recording of Richard's unhinged confession from the night before. His screaming voice filled the call, shattering the quiet. But it wasn't just his brazen admission to the credit card theft that echoed through the speakers. In his blind, arrogant rant, he had revealed a devastating secondary twist that none of us, not Cameron, not Aunt Valerie, not even the extended cousins knew anything about. The recording played the exact moment Richard snarled the lethal truth. The Amalfi Coast trip was never a family reunion. Richard's elite Aspen business empire was secretly, catastrophically bankrupt. They were drowning in insurmountable debt and facing imminent financial ruin. The $36,000 in first-class tickets weren't for family bonding or creating precious memories. Brenda and Richard had invited extremely wealthy, high-profile potential business investors on the Italian trip, promising to treat them to an all-expenses-paid luxury experience. They had meticulously planned to use my stolen credit line not just for the flights, but to fund a massive $50,000 yacht charter and a luxurious cliffside villa deposit to secure a desperately needed corporate bailout. By freezing the cards and disputing the charges, I didn't just cancel a family vacation. I had completely, irrevocably collapsed their entire fraudulent business empire. The silence on the video call was deafening and heavy. Aunt Valerie gasped loudly, physically covering her mouth in shock. Cameron stared at his parents in sheer, undisguised horror, finally realizing the terrifying depth of their deception. Richard's smug, executive facade melted instantly into a pale, sickening dread. Brenda's eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated panic as the realization hit her. I hadn't just protected my money, I had pulled the final linchpin out of their entire fragile, debt-ridden existence. They weren't just ungrateful parents anymore. They were exposed, desperate criminals whose grand illusion had just been shattered in front of their remaining family. The investors would never fund them. The empire was dead. I didn't wait for their stammering excuses. I looked at their terrified faces one last time, and I ended the call. Stripped of his perceived power and his carefully cultivated arrogance, Richard showed up uninvited at my secure downtown Denver loft the very next morning. The power dynamic had flipped instantly and brutally. The polished Aspen executive was gone. In his place stood a man who looked disheveled, frantic, and a decade older than I had ever seen him. He stood in the lobby of my building, buzzing my intercom frantically. I buzzed him up, needing to end this face-to-face. When he reached the hallway outside my door, his hands were noticeably trembling as he pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. It was a cashier's check for $40,000. He had pawned his prized vintage Patek Philippe watch and liquidated a secret domestic emergency savings account he kept hidden even from Brenda just to secure the funds. It was hush money, desperately scraped together from the very last of his hidden liquid assets. He begged me. He pleaded with actual tears in his eyes, abandoning all pride, begging me to drop the police investigation, to withdraw the fraud charges, to save him from imminent prison and total public bankruptcy. I stared at the check, viewing it merely as a physical manifestation of his utter desperation and moral bankruptcy. Then I looked my father dead in the eye. Anger wasn't loud, it was absolute ice. I told him, in a tone devoid of any familial warmth, that my peace was not for sale. I handed the check back to him, informed him that he and Brenda would face the full, unmitigated legal consequences of their theft, and I closed the door on him forever. I watched from a healthy, protected distance as the inevitable consequences unfolded over the next few months. Their fraudulent business collapsed entirely under the weight of the frozen funds and the exposed lies, leaving them facing catastrophic bankruptcy and a relentless criminal fraud investigation. The extended family, finally seeing the ugly, undeniable truth, shunned them completely. My credit was fully restored, my accounts were safe, and my loft remained a sanctuary of quiet, unbothered calm. I've come to realize that society places an immense, often toxic burden on the concept of family loyalty. We are taught that bloodlines require infinite forgiveness, that we must endure financial and emotional abuse to keep the peace. But the truth is, true family supports your independence and your growth. They do not view you as a resource to be exploited. Walking away from financial abusers who happen to share your DNA isn't an act of cruelty. It is the ultimate act of self-respect. Forgiveness isn't always meant for the people who hurt you. Sometimes, setting a hard, impenetrable boundary is the only way to set yourself free. I chose my freedom, and the profound peace I have now is worth more than any grand illusion they ever tried to sell me. Have you ever had to draw a hard line to protect your financial or mental health from your own family? Drop a comment below to share your story. You never know who might need to read it today. Like and subscribe if you believe peace is worth more than pretending.